the thesis has really played out. In the last 2 weeks, we've seen almost as many contracts deployed to Flow as in the entirety of the 2 years before that. So it's starting to gain a lot of momentum, make it a lot easier for people to jump in. And that just means more utility, more value, more portability for consumers.
Sam, how are you doing?
Avery, I'm doing great. I got to say, excited for today's show. We have a lot going on. We have a great guest in Roham, CEO, co-founder of Dapper, to talk about all things happening in their world. But first, it's been a wild couple of days, Avery. I got to tell you, we broke the story this morning, so it's still on my mind, about how much North Korea has infiltrated the crypto industry. Anyone who wants to see this, check out Sam Kessler's article on North Korean crypto. There's someone who quoted that said, up to 50% of developers applying for jobs in crypto are actually North Korean hackers who are
Not
coming
great.
in to both
Not
be
great, Sam.
not great. Not great for the industry. I hate to say, like, maybe is this a reason to like not have remote work? I don't know what's going on, but it's a crazy story. So everyone should go read that. But actually, the story I wanted to talk to you about today, Avery, they just announced that OpenAI now has a new valuation, $157 billion. For context, 6 months ago, 7 months ago, it was 80 billion. Right. So it's doubled almost in, the time it would take you to have a child. It's kind of crazy when we think about that it's growing so fast. It also, in the article in the New York Times that we'll link in the show notes, it said that they're expecting 3.7 billion in sales this year, but they're still expected to lose 5 billion on top of that, because as we know, AI is so expensive on the compute side to do that even though they're going to make, the startup that wasn't really anything 2 or 3 years ago now is going to build $3.7 billion and they're still going to lose 5 billion. It's just crazy. A wild time to be in AI. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on this.
I have so many thoughts. And it's, what I want to double down on is actually what you just mentioned around cost, because I don't think that necessarily all consumers realize the true cost, that, monetary cost. There's obviously, all this sort of collateral cost as well, but the monetary cost of running a lot of these things. So most of our partners at Vayner have their own Blink brand GPT. It's pretty normal at this point. I would say it's in use across most of our partners, but they often have these credits and like they run out of the credits like immediately. And the reason for the credits is like, actually all this computing cost is very real. And I think oftentimes consumers are like, oh, I can just do this now for free because it's, freely available to me. I know ChatGPT and Claude and whatnot, they have these subscriptions that are like $20 a month. $20 a month doesn't even come close to covering like the real computing costs, especially for power users who are generating a lot of different stuff. I think that's going to be an interesting thing for us to see play out in the enterprise world over the next couple of years, because on one hand, they're like, yes, job reduction. On the other hand, like kind of, but also there are real costs associated to this. This is not free. It is not magic internet freebie, free information. So paying close attention. I'm a power user across all of these. Every single time I try something new on one of these platforms, I'm blown away. And what I'm also getting more and more blown away by is just how this is changing consumer search behavior. So Sam, I don't know if you have seen this in action, but I've seen kids in my workplace using this instead of Google in a way that I'm like, that's really interesting. I'm seeing other people use this instead of Googling things. The ability to take pictures and then ask ChatGPT what is happening, or how do I make this soup thicker, or what kind of a tool do I use to change the screws on this? Like, that's pretty amazing. So I'm obsessed with the consumer side of it, seeing how people are using this. And of course, I'm obsessed with the enterprise cost side of it, which I don't think gets any coverage. It doesn't get talked about at all, at least in the meetings that I'm in right now.
You brought up so many good points there. The things that stand out to me, and I think you're right, that this is slowly replacing some tools that just feel a little dated, and I want to talk about that in a second. But it's the company continues to like double or quadruple its valuation, which feels like every 6 to 9 months right now. We're starting to hit a moment where that's going to be really hard to do. They could become the most valuable company in the world. We don't know. But also at the same time, you are having Anthropic and Claude, you're having Notebook LLM, and you're having all these different more like specified LLMs jump up. So there's also more competition, and people are starting to find, oh, ChatGPT does this well, but doesn't do this well. And then they'll have a series of these things. We also know Google's integrating a ton of this stuff in. We know Llama is deep in the open source side of this. So I also wonder, when it really comes down to the dollars that one can make on the revenue side, whether there is a capped upside that at some point starts to bring these valuations down. The other thing I think is interesting, and I'm sure you and I have both been in the same position, they've grown so fast, right? Like in the last 9 months, they've added 1,000 people to their roster, which brings the company to 1,700 total. We saw, a big announcement last week of one of their core founders leaving in Mira Murati.
Exactly.
So, like, at what cost are they getting to this? Because when you hire 1,000 people in 9 months and you've now added 60% more people to the company, or 130%
Yeah,
more
but
people,
Sam, that's such a
what does it do to
small
your
number of
culture?
people. That's such a small number of people. Like in this, I mean, the revenue per head count, let's just say VaynerMedia and OpenAI, it's
Right.
comparable. We have
Yes.
way more than 1,700 employees and way less valuation. I think that's still so small. They're going to have to add staff. It was like, this is the leanest organization. This is probably, somebody fact check me on this, but this is probably one of the highest revenue per head count businesses that's ever existed. It's or valuation per head count that's ever
Valuation,
existed.
yes. We and again, I give a shout out to our team. We released a video this week with Paolo Arduino, who's the CEO of Tether. Tether did $4 billion in profit last quarter at 80 employees. And like we were just like, this is the most successful company there's ever been. So, and I
Good
think
for them.
OpenAI
I'm in the
is
wrong industry.
yeah, really. OpenAI, though, I think you're right, right? I mean, when you look at their revenue compared to a lot of big tech companies that might have 10 times that amount of staff for the same billings and doesn't have the upside. True. I guess I just wonder culturally, when you hire so many people quickly, you go for these very specified, brilliant people to then now we have to fill out all these roles and we have to do it quick. And
It's
so what happens
still,
when you do that?
my point is it's still very, very small in comparison to some of
I
the
hear
big
you.
tech
I hear you.
companies. That being said, one thing, and I'm going to link this to the remote work conversation, which is very du jour as well, with some big news from Amazon and others. But OpenAI is an in-person company. I think that's interesting. They are bringing their workforce back to their office in San Francisco. That is very clearly communicated to their new hires. And I think that is something that we will be seeing more of. If we were looking a couple of years back, everybody was remote first, remote only, et cetera. And I'm seeing a big swing in enterprises wanting people to come back to the office. How are you feeling about that, Sam? Are you at your office right now?
I'm at my office as we speak. To the utter dismay of our producer, Wen, I like being in the office and I like having team come to the office around me, but I also give them leeway. But I do think that it's rare these days that I meet someone who has a remote only job. I think that we are seeing more and more hybrid happening. I think hybrid is the perfect balance because it does allow a single mother to take care of her kid. Like, there's a lot of things that I think hybrid really, really allows for. But I do think that we are seeing the death of the remote worker with the exception of certain kinds of companies and certain kinds of roles. And I think part of that is because I think the productivity hit is real. I think people, like remember during the pandemic when we heard all those stories of people who had 2 and 3 full-time jobs because when you're remote, you could kind of do anything and suddenly you could take advantage of that. And if I could have done that, I would have. But I do think that people are seeing values of not only just the camaraderie, but the idea of what happens when you run into someone and they get to help you solve a problem or create an opportunity. We see that all day at CoinDesk. So I'm a fan of the hybrid workplace, despite a lot of people I know who don't like me to say that out loud. But I think it is working. And if I was a younger person than I am today, I would be in the office quite a bit because I think that's the quickest way to advance.
I couldn't agree more. We are not a remote company at Vayner. We are an in-person company. I'm sitting in the office right now. I love seeing the team in all the conference rooms. It's amazing. And I think that's, interesting what you just noted, Sam, of if you were a young person, you would be back. The interesting thing is a lot of the young people do not want to come back to the office. And I think this is like an interesting, like sort of generational tension that we're seeing because you and I are like, but happy hour, fun. Do you have an office
Right.
crush? And I think that's something that a lot of companies are working through and figuring out. I think hybrid makes a lot of sense, especially like in office on Fridays. I don't know if it's ever going to be like it was pre-pandemic, and I don't know if that's a bad thing. Everyone enjoys a little freedom and flexibility, but definitely a very hot topic for a lot of our brand marketers and listeners who are probably wondering this themselves. And the types of jobs that are remote, I'm still seeing in tech, you can still get some of those happening. But for marketing in a world where you need to collaborate to be effective, we love getting people together. We are always say this, but we really need to get a live Gen Z happening again sometime soon.
Absolutely. My office crush, by the way, is the snack drawer at the
Great.
company. So, but with that said, Avery, let us not keep our guests waiting any longer. So right after the break, we'll be back with Roham Gharegozlou, the CEO of Dapper Labs, involved in the Flow blockchain, all things crypto, CryptoKitties, Top Shot, all the things that we've been talking about for years and years. It's great to finally have Roham on. So we'll see you after the break.
Looking forward to it.
All right, we are here with Roham Gharegozlou. Roham, you are the co-founder, CEO of Dapper Labs. You are OG in the crypto space, one of the creative minds behind CryptoKitties and so many other things, Top Shot that we're going to talk about. I'm pretty interested in your thoughts on a ton of topics for today. So really excited for this conversation and thank you for joining us. I would say first, what are you guys working on now? You've been building in this space for longer than most. So yeah, like what's exciting you? What are you guys excited about for Dapper specifically? And just like, what's your general take on the state of crypto?
Yeah, thank you for having me, Sam. And I'm excited to be here. It's this is a big question, but the good news is Dapper's been, like you said, we've been firing on all cylinders, and in a lot of ways, we're working on the continuation of the same mission we started 6 years ago. The NFL season just kicked off. We're really excited about what we have in store for the NFL All Day product. It's 100,000 orders came in for the last round of rookie packs because I think it's the most exciting rookie class we've had in a very long time. We've got the new CryptoKitties game that just launched on Telegram. So this is a continuation of the CryptoKitties universe that started the company effectively, but is tapping into all the exciting stuff going on in Telegram and giving people an opportunity to earn points that they then spend on more items. And so we're very excited about that product. And our NBA season kicks off in 2 weeks. And we had our best WNBA season this summer ever with the Caitlin Clark mania kind of just exploding in the product as well as on the court, and really excited for the W going forward. But then when the NBA season kicks off, you start seeing a lot of new changes to the product, a lot of rebalancing we've done over the summer, and just excited to welcome people into crypto products that are crypto on the back end, but not in your face. And really a lot of this, I feel like we've been launching more products in the last 12 months than or more different kinds of products, because now both NBA and NFL have daily gameplay that you can actually play with your mobile sort of digital trading cards you can play with, and a lot of that has been quite recent. So I feel like we're just getting started.
Wow. Amazing to hear one of the pioneers in the blockchain and crypto space say they're just getting started. I think that's indicative of how people who've been in the space for a while are sort of feeling. You mentioned CryptoKitties. For the audience who is not as educated on the early days of CryptoKitties, would you be able to share a little bit more about the origin of that initiative?
Yeah, so the CryptoKitties was the first, I would say, consumer blockchain experience that sort of broke through. It was the first time, someone had taken what people had back then, and but even today, primarily see as a financial technology, and just said, well, what happens if we build a game on top of it? And so the original version of CryptoKitties launched on the Ethereum mainnet November 28th. That's about 2 months after we wrote the first non-fungible token standard, ERC 721. So we had to write the standard first, then we created it, but nobody really cared until we created the game. But within 48 hours, the whole network was on fire. And at one point, we were about 30% of all compute on the Ethereum network, 30% of gas spent on the Ethereum network. And while it was very exciting, we kind of could tell, hey, this is going to be a long journey. There's a lot of work to do. The user experience, top of funnel, was really bad. The scalability problems that exposed eventually led to Flow, which is the blockchain that everything else that we've built since then runs on. But it was a journey getting here from there. So it's been a lot of fun. But I think just now we're starting to get to the point where with Telegram, with other things, we've got the distribution network, we've got the technology, and we can just focus on kind of the user experience.
I want to dive a little bit more into the Telegram gameplay. So, describing to Avery and I, CryptoKitties is one of the OG NFT projects, right? CryptoPunks and CryptoKitties, I think, were the two big ones that really got people excited back in, was it 2018, 2017? And now you just announced this new game. I think anyone who pays attention to crypto Twitter saw, like, a couple weeks ago, there was a lot of chatter happening around CryptoKitties eggs. But like, I actually wrote the first article on CoinDesk about hamster combat months and months ago, and was like so bullish on this concept of social gaming utilizing Telegram and like-minded platforms, partly just because of how easy it is, and the onboarding of that and Catizens and CryptoKitties on Telegram allow us to get a lot of people into the space in a very low friction way. So what made you decide to build the game on Telegram? Are you utilizing all of those kind of game dynamics that a lot of these other folks are using? What's unique to the game itself? But just tell us a little bit more about the CryptoKitties game.
Yeah, we are, and Telegram is a very interesting network because it's in a lot of ways not U.S. centered, and so a lot of us here in North America kind of don't interact with it on a daily basis. Obviously, in crypto, it's a little bit different, but seeing the numbers that these applications are driving, and then recognizing that, hey, look, there's a lot that makes sense here, but there's a lot that we can maybe kind of package up in a different way and make the games not just about point farming or token farming, but make them fun, make them part of a lore, build experiences that maybe cross over in and out of Telegram and can actually eventually create surface area for other developers, leaning into kind of what makes crypto and Web3 special. It reminded me a lot of the early days of the Facebook platform, kind of seeing growth go wild for some of these applications that are, at first very simple, but then you continue to kind of iterate on the gameplay, on the monetization, on the retention. And it were even fit early days of the App Store, where at first all the apps were kind of simple, one-click mechanics, but eventually got more complex. And our thesis from the very beginning of Dapper was that games and consumer products would sort of drive that initial adoption, and then it was kind of percolate to other aspects of digital life. And I think it's starting to play out. So we wanted to jump in. We wanted to be active in kind of that space, but bring a slightly different approach to it. So you'll see the CryptoKitties game is, we just launched it, but it's, I think, richer, deeper than people expect. And it's only the gateway into everything else that's coming for the rest of the year and beyond.
Spoken like a true builder. So we just talked a little bit about sort of the origin of CryptoKitties and also what you all are doing with it now. Oftentimes being one of those first movers means sometimes you're ahead of like clear legislation in these types of things. And I saw recently that you all established sort of a settlement in a firm stance that Top Shots, which was a prominent product from your team's perspective, did not qualify as a security under federal law. I'd love to understand a little bit more about that. This is such a big thing that pioneers in the blockchain space have been dealing with over the last, I would say, like 18 months to a year. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience and also how you all are moving forward as a company?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from the very beginning, we've tried being as open and as engaging with regulators as possible. Dapper Labs is a Canadian company, so that informed our initial approach. Even before we wrote the non-fungible token standard, we worked with the local regulators in Canada to make sure they understood the difference between that and what's going on with ICOs and fungible tokens, et cetera. And the good news is you're seeing lawmakers catch up and jump on a train. You hear, out of DC, people saying clearly, hey, trading cards are not securities. And so if trading cards aren't
Right.
securities, how can an NFT of a trading card or an NFT trading card be a security? So people are starting to understand that. And, regulation by enforcement isn't good for anybody. It sort of chills innovation. And I think, I'm in New York right now as someone who I went to college in the US. I think this country should be the center of innovation in many ways, and I think lawmakers understand that. So we're happy to be engaging with folks at that level and trying to bring clarity to the space. You might have seen the New Frontiers in Technology Act, the NFT Act, is also trying to kind of show the difference between speculative and financial uses of the technology, which should be potentially. And you think about even the financial use case of technology. Regulators and lawmakers are starting to understand the transparency it gives, the auditability, the openness. That's actually good for the aims of ultimately protecting consumers. And a lot of the issues that happen in crypto are happening on the centralized side of the house, the same shenanigans that happen in traditional finance, rather than when things are open, on-chain, auditable, then at least everybody can see what's going on. So we've gone through our share of ups and downs in this field, but I'm proud to say, from the settlement that you referenced, very clearly articulating Top Shots and also the openness of the Flow blockchain and decentralized nature of what that network is. Dapper did create it, but today all of the people working on it are outside of Dapper. All of the nodes are outside of Dapper's control. We run a minority of everything, so a small minority, and so it's those are just facts that need to be established because the space is early and the details are nuanced and complicated. And at the end of the day, we're just here because we believe this tech actually makes life better for consumers, makes life better for developers, and I think achieves the aims of regulators and lawmakers in the long run of protecting consumers and competition.
Before we get into all things collectibles, because I think you guys really, on the brand side, have done more than most in this space. And I know, both Avery and I think want to focus on the brand conversation. But I do know that you guys had I believe it's the Crescendo upgrade on Flow, which has made it compatible with Ethereum, EVM, compatibility. How are you guys finding the sort of access to continual like developers coming on? What does the upgrade mean for people coming in? I know that was kind of one of your big announcements recently. And as a group that's focused, I think, on consumers more than most, how is that part of the larger kind of idea and vision to bring this to, anyone who wants to be able to build on top?
Yeah, it's a really great question. The Crescendo upgrade is basically the biggest network upgrade Flow has ever undergone since the network went live, and made a bunch of performance improvements, other things. But that EVM equivalence piece you're mentioning, to a consumer or a collector of let's say NBA Top Shot, it eventually just means more utility, more things to do with your assets, with your moments, and also full interoperability with everything else in the Ethereum ecosystem. So for a lot of especially indie developers or more Web3 native developers building on Flow and other networks, they want their users, if they want to have their asset in a MetaMask, they can have it in a MetaMask. The fungible tokens, we want them to be ERC20 and ERC20 compatible, because that way all the exchanges, all the DeFi infrastructure, all the decentralized exchanges, as well as centralized exchanges, have a much easier time interfacing with it. So it's really about backwards compatibility and interoperability. I remember when Top Shot was at its peak of growth, we were the fastest growing NFT project in the world, and OpenSea at the time was the fastest growing marketplace. But Top Shot NFTs couldn't be listed or traded on OpenSea. And so it was kind of a break in that promise of interoperability, of openness, of the very purpose of these assets and these networks. And I think the EVM equivalence on Flow just makes that so much easier, because everything that works on ETH mainnet or any layer 2 works out of the box on Flow as if it was another layer 2. But the good thing about Flow is you can still have access to all of the benefits of cadence, in terms of performance, in terms of user experience, in terms of developer experience, building more complex things than you could with Solidity. So it's kind of a best of both worlds type of situation. Early on, we talked about it kind of like parallels on Mac, letting people with Windows products bring them into the Mac universe. But it's actually even more easy, like even a deeper, more seamless integration than that. As a developer that writes in cadence in terms of Dapper, all of our assets will also be compatible with the MetaMask and Ethereum networks, bridges back to Ethereum, as well as exchanges, ERC20 compatible, et cetera. So it's been 2 weeks, but the thesis has really played out. In the last 2 weeks, we've seen almost as many contracts deployed to Flow as in the entirety of the 2 years before that. So it's starting to gain a lot of momentum, make it a lot easier for people to jump in. And that just means more utility, more value, more portability for consumers.
That's amazing. You've seen more new contracts deployed on Flow than you all have been seeing in the past couple of years. We should absolutely clip that. It's really interesting. And I think many people would probably be surprised to hear that, Ro. What do you think is driving that surge in new users on Flow?
Well, I think from that perspective, it's just the developers, and it's a lower barrier to entry. So it's very easy to take an Ethereum contract, bring it to Flow, and then add things to it. And of
Right?
course, as you know, there's way more developers and contracts written for Ethereum until now than any other blockchain network. But even like, let's say, a DeFi builder that brings a contract over to Flow, we're seeing those folks innovate and build things that are more consumer oriented, mainstream focused. For example, I just talked to a team, DeFi protocol, a lending protocol that's taking into account real world credit scores and building products that institutions can use, as well as eventually individuals, where they can actually kind of get more loans if they have a good real world credit score. And kind of bridging those two worlds is very important to us, because at the end of the day, we just need more users, more people benefiting from the value here, not just circulating the same dollars among the same hands.
For one, I need to learn more about this. Real world credit integration sounds really smart and like something that could help a lot of people. Total side note, but my friend has a company that's helping renters, because if you think about most Americans' biggest expense is actually rent, but that doesn't factor into your credit score because it's often done like cash and landlords. Of course, you all, probably think the same thing. I'm like, crypto is a great solution here. But even factoring in the credit component starts to get really, really interesting and starts to be something that would actually change people's lives and financial futures. So all that aside, let's talk a little bit about sort of the arc of digital collectibles. Earlier in this podcast, you noted if trading cards aren't securities, why should digital trading cards be? And I think that's our exact point of view at Vayner as well. Can you talk a little bit about sort of the original thesis that you all had on this idea of digital trading cards? the origin of the Top Shot community, and a little bit about how you all have continued to develop it. You mentioned a little bit about your WNBA strategy and some of the stuff you're doing with All Day. So talk about that narrative arc.
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, we all started as collectors, and collecting's been a part of the human experience from pretty much the birth of civilization, right? Like walking along the beach, collecting seashells, expressing your identity through the stuff that you have versus other people. And so that inherent concept, early on we explored it with CryptoKitties, but the way we realized is like, can we guarantee that this can reach a lot of people? We have to go after a sort of super intense fan community and give them a tool to kind of engage digitally. People already collect all kinds of sports memorabilia. People are collect so much value in trading cards, but there's so much benefit that digital can bring. Full transparency globally in terms of how much supply exists of a given card. Often people talk about that there's this many PSA 10s of this card, but you don't even know what's out there sitting in people's basements and binders. And so bring total transparency into supply, bring total and very easy liquidity. Even today, people are vaulting their trading cards in somewhere just so they can have both safety as well as ease of buying and selling. So digital has all of that from the ground up. And also we realized because it's digital, you can actually celebrate the number one thing people love about sports, and that people spend their time on social media. The number one use of time, like piece of content that kind of is consumed across Instagram, Twitter, et cetera, is sports highlights. And so we took kind of the excitement people have about sports highlights, the deep fandom that kind of collecting something real brings, and then the ease of use of gameplay and products like NBA 2K, products like Madden Ultimate Team, and tried to like mush all of that sort of together and realize that people are spending $1 billion plus in products like Ultimate Team, but they're not getting anything that benefits them. They can't sell any of the value they create. They can't monetize kind of the time they spend in the product. And so how can we bring that value of NFTs into kind of the behavior that already exists, build on top of the community that is growing like trading cards, and just try to make a better product?
I want to go even deeper into the ways that folks are utilizing this technology, because I think while you guys were pioneering with Top Shot and now as well on the NFL All Day, we could look at both of those and saying, here are two of the biggest brands in the world. And then you layer the fact that you guys are working with Disney and Mattel and Live Nation and all these other folks and still building day in, day out with them. Often when we're asked, where do the brands go? I think that I tend to sort of point them back your guys' way, just to say, there are folks that are still building and still releasing these products and really exploring these pipelines.
Absolutely.
And I know, Disney's one that I get the emails about every week. And I guess even though people are not talking about this as much, I kind of looked at it through the lens of you guys are actually positioning yourselves very well for when the brands come back or other brands, because you'll have this amazing case study roster of some of the biggest brands in the collectible game. And so I guess I'm interested in, how do you look at where you're at today? And then also, how are consumers interacting with these Mattel products, with these Live Nation ticketing, ticket stubs? How should they be thinking about it? Because I think if we all think about it through the lens of just like, is collectible going to be worth more, then we're doing ourselves a little disservice to the technology. How do you guys sort of frame this and talk to these big brand partners and talk about the why that you're doing this with them?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think what we've seen is some of the more forward-thinking, kind of serious brands actually leaned in once after some of the dust has settled from FTX, et cetera. Like this idea that it's no longer a get-rich-quick mania was actually, okay, now this is more interesting for us to explore as a tool to bring our digital communities together. Products like Disney Pinnacle are still monetizing really highly. Our product, Disney Pinnacle, even though it's in sort of closed release, still is monetizing in a way that suggests people want to engage with each other around these communities. And at the end of the day, there's so much more that you can build on top. So Avery, you had asked, hey, where did Top Shot start? Where is it going?
Yep.
It started as just a collectible. Today you can log in Top Shot every single day, or you will be able to once the sports season starts. Play games against your friends, with your assets, win real world prizes. Eventually potentially compete as a group to win even bigger prizes, and kind of play the similar games that you're playing on other sites, but with stuff you own in order to get real value out without actually losing anything. So if you lose, you still have your stuff you can play the next day, and it's kind of creating an interesting flywheel with really, really high retention. And so that's kind of the story that I think attracts brands, is how do you make authentic experiences that people come back to every day, not just to kind of check the price, but to also play, to also interact with each other, to flex, have the same social experiences that they do in real life. Disney actually has multiple products that run on Flow because they're also partners with Cryptoids, which is an Andreessen funded company that's both Disney and Mattel. And then Mattel has their own marketplace on Flow. Ticketmaster has built it all themselves. We're not a Dapper is not a execution partner to
Mhm.
that. And but Ticketmaster is maybe one of the biggest Web3 products ever, other than cryptocurrency exchanges. They've got 13, 14 million real users who come in, claim they're about 72 million ticket stub NFTs. And at the end of the day, they're ticket stubs. So most of their value is as like memory effectively, because most ticket stubs sit in your drawer anyway, but they're kind of like creators. They're the markers of on-chain identity. And when people look back, 5 years, 10 years from now, when your wallet address and your on-chain identity matters as much as your Instagram account and your real world identity, it's very cool that a lot of those initial assets will be the tickets that the concerts you went to, the sports games you went to, et cetera, et cetera. And we're going to try and build on top of that, such that if people go to NBA games or NFL games, they can get recognized and rewarded at NBA Top Shot and NFL All Day. And if people have status or have certain high tiers of fandom in our products, that they can get recognized by the leagues as well. And those are also only things you can do digitally. So this kind of like open, decentralized sort of loyalty kind of platform that you're not giving up your customers away to another entity. You're actually able to engage with them directly. It's something that brands are recognizing is going to be a huge part of how they engage with consumers in the future.
Markers of on-chain identity is a great way to put it. I think, if we look back 3 years, this was something that a lot of brands were very actively investing in. We had an agency dedicated to that. And I think that that has shifted. Like you said, that there was almost that like broken promise of decentralization with what was happening with, your platform, which was crushing it with Top Shot, and then the OpenSea marketplace, which were the two sort of like leaders at that time. I think it's very interesting in theory, right? And it makes sense theoretically, but you just noted like in 5 to 10 years, this will be a little bit more of a reality. How do you feel like conversations with some of the brand partners that you work with have evolved? Because, I think back 3 years ago, every single brand manager and, CMO was probably like, Ro, help us get this set up. I want my own version of Top Shot. And I would guess that a lot of those conversations have cooled off if over the years, especially as people sort of figure out exactly what their strategies in blockchain. Can you talk a bit about the brands that you see who are sort of committed in staying the course and maybe the leaders in the space now from your opinion? I really like what Ticketmaster has done because I think it's so smart, but I also know so many teams and marketers have actually, decreased their investment in this type of thing just as they wait for consumer behavior to catch up.
Yeah, look, I think at the end of the day, that's the key thing, consumer behavior. Are you a brand that can drive consumer behavior? And does your brand allow you to kind of be surfing at the forefront of it? Or are you more of a brand that people engage with in terms of it's more the late adopters and the early majority that engage, and not necessarily kind of the cutting edge folks who, it'd be a little random for them to kind of like chase McDonald's, with all due
Or
respect
toilet paper.
to
Maybe
that
people don't
company.
need a toilet paper NFT quite yet, but maybe they do.
Quite yet, quite yet. But so we were always about sort of super fan communities, and we had to turn down a lot of folks because we realized at one point that like there's a lot more work to do to kind of, and we have to go deeper in the brands we work
Mhm.
with, not shallower and just like copy pasting hey, you bought a picture of a animal that represents the brand. Like that's not what an NFT is. It's more about the application behind it and the network and the sort of the integration between the real world sort of assets the brand has and the digital experiences that sort of reflect that brand's energy. And so we just said, hey, let's focus on NBA, NFL, Disney because they're the three biggest brands in the world, and we need to create kind of almost deep sort of lighthouse experiences that show what this technology can do. And we have a high degree of support across all three of those organizations. But even a lot of the folks we turned down that went, or folks that went with other partners who either maybe didn't have the funding to stay through or didn't have the conviction, those brand leaders, or at least, in terms of sports organizations, commissioners, et cetera, well, actually, they still keep in touch and call us back up and ask, if we can help, because it's less about a cash grab and more about a how can we sort of be part of this new world and engage that new kind of consumer and sort of be there when the early adoption happens. But again, I think the answer isn't let's just copy paste a model that works. It's let's find the right experience within that brand's universe that creates kind of awesome engagement within first a small super fan community that then expands. And, the name Pinnacle was chosen for a reason of like, you got to start with the pinnacle of the fans and then kind of work your way down. But, it's not dissimilar to how, things like the internet and other things worked out. The reality is just like the user experience of engaging in any of these products has been a little janky, and it's only now getting to the point where people are kind of onboarding en masse through things like Telegram, which also is non-US yet, and so still need kind of a native distribution platform.
Mhm.
So I guess long way to say, focused on kind of going deep and creating super fan oriented experiences that give value back to folks.
Roham, I just want to pick up because you talk about consumer behavior. And I know, again, you guys were just in Singapore. We have our big event in Hong Kong in early next year. I keep
Yep.
hearing that there's a potential for a kind of adoption leap that's already happening over there, where the idea of digital experiences, digital access, digital collectibles, digital identity is happening in Asia in a way that is frankly a lot more forward than it is in the US. So are you also looking at Asia as a place to maybe start to bring these new paradigms in and see, frankly, just more receptiveness?
Yeah, I mean, it's the exact same thing happened if you remember in the whole kind of free to play mobile digital assets, even like skins, et cetera. The Asia just thought in a more digital native way, even last cycle. I thought with this cycle, things would change because obviously CryptoKitties and NBA Top Shot were both very kind of North America centric products. But now with what you're seeing on Telegram and just on the ground, just seeing every major social network and gaming company in Asia has adopted crypto as a part of their toolbox, right? Whether it's launching their own layer one or layer two networks, in the case of folks like Sony and Line and like Clayton and others, or whether it's building platform layer stuff like integrating them into their stacks, having infrastructure projects that are more about, hey, what does an ad network look like here? What is, how can we bring kind of the same things we do in the other world into this world, or whether it's building actual products. And, a few games have been announced with larger partners. And, it's just very interesting to see the change in dynamic. But I remember, I was in college when Facebook launched, and my first sort of job out of school or my first internship was at a venture capital firm. And I remember all those decks with entrepreneurs saying, "Hey, look, like $3 billion a year of digital assets are sold in Asia, and like that's going to come to the U.S." Obviously, now it's so much more than that. But those behavior shifts happen quickly, especially when in this case there's actually economic opportunity, and for people that are early or smart or fast or capable, they can make real money. And we know in America people like making money, and also with sort of every layer of entertainment has become so deeply ingrained with kind of skin in the game and sports betting this and fantasy that. And, there's been a culture shift even in the US where the concept of money and sort of even you see it with GameStop, Robinhood, et cetera, like those behaviors are very much percolating and part of the sort of early adopter class here too. So I think the worlds are coming closer together, but yeah, we don't have to convince anybody in Asia that, the future of consumer products involves crypto.
I love that. Just out of curiosity, like what percentage of your like active monthly users, we'll just say September, like where are they coming from? Like how much of that is like North America? I know you all are really strong in Canada, given your, founding team. What roughly is it? Is it like 70% North American, or is that like totally off? Or can you not say?
No, I can certainly say it is on that order of magnitude. It's I think 60, somewhere between 65 and 70%.
Wow. I was spot
US
on.
It's
That's
the John
shocking.
Avery.
I was like, that could go completely the other way too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for NBA and NFL products, that's actually a pretty reasonable international exposure. The reality is all our products are also English only, and so we have a lot of Australians, we have a lot of UK folks, we have folks from across Europe, but it is very much a Western oriented audience. With CryptoKitties and what we're doing with Telegram, et cetera, we want to start from the ground up, making sure we're engaging every community in the world. And I think you see on Telegram, the numbers are very skewed the other way. It's not so much a US and Canadian kind of behavior. And I think that's fine. It's going to be exciting.
Well, yeah. One other thing I wanted to kind of get your perspective on, just to switch gears here a little bit, is Dapper several years ago actually acquired the AI firm who created Lil Miquela for those of our listeners who are not familiar with Lil Miquela, I would say she was a pioneer in the digital influencer space. I think we first did a deal with her like, I don't know, 5 years ago or something when that was still very new, foreshadowing to now where there's a lot of virtual influencers who have large followings and very integrated brand deals. Bro, I'd love to hear how your team is integrating Lil Miquela. I know Redeema's in the mix on that. Is that related to your sort of core business strategy, or is that treated as sort of a standalone business unit at present?
Well, all of Dapper is kind of organized into semi-independent business units. So we've got our IP products, NBA, NFL, Disney.
Mhm.
Got CryptoKitties is pretty independent, and then Michaela has also an independent team. When we bought Brud, the company behind Michaela, Michaela was a huge production. She had her own motion capture studio, full equipment, a suit that people wore to create content, and now she's fully Gen AI powered. So a single individual can create the most complex scenes you can imagine. And so that was one sort of big thing of trying to get her, up to the latest technology, let's say, and giving her the freedom to kind of be anywhere, do anything, without a human necessarily having to be in the suit. And then we've sort of rebooted some of the brand partnerships, trying to work with some of the best, most forward-thinking teams. So we work with BMW to add some innovations to the AI model. We're pretty proud of the commercial she created there. Some more stuff coming soon. We did partner with WorldCoin and trying to kind of explain that technology to other folks. She's also tried to become a banner bearer for the next crop of digital influencers. I think she's been giving out awards to the best digital influencers and things like that as part of like the awards show there. But more importantly, we want to use her community of 9 million, 10 million folks that are now not 19 anymore because they've grown up with her as well, and they're interested in making use of the latest technologies, and we want to figure out what's the best way to integrate what we do with the rest of Dapper into her sort of universe. So whether could it be meme coins? Could it be more of like a DAO type of a thing where you can control or vote in the things she does next or the brands she works with? Is it more of a Telegram app experience where you can talk with her? Is it everything at the same time? Is it opening her up so other developers can build those experiences? So I think we're exploring all of those options. We've got some things in testing, but nothing to invite people into just yet.
I think what's interesting is whether you have Lil Miquela, who's, has 2.5 million followers on Instagram, or you have the thousands of CryptoKitties that might be an individual's asset in their own wallet. Each of those can be a virtual being that you can have a relationship with as a virtual companion, as a friend, as a guide. And so, once that stuff gets figured out, I still think there's such an upside for the idea of now when all of this starts to merge and we can give personality to, all the assets around us, which is both frightens me and excites me at the same time, which is my general existence. Ro, thank you so much for spending time with us today. It was great having this conversation. I know you're in New York and on the circuit, but it's always great to catch up and find out what's happening over at Dapper and Flow and all the amazing stuff that you guys are doing. So I appreciate the time spent today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
I really admire Dapper, and having Ro on was amazing. Great choice for some of our dedicated listeners. You may remember we had Redeema on maybe last year. She's amazing and leading a lot of their important work streams, including Lil Miquela. But I really admire Dapper, and I really appreciate what Ro shared and sort of his belief in, the markers of your on-chain identity as a core sort of part of their continued thesis. I think so many brands and so many companies and so many NFT platforms have either just walked back a lot of those statements or, watered down their original go-to-market call to actions. And this interview could have happened in 2021, and I don't think it would have changed much.
No, I agree. And I think Roham is such a good evangelist and ambassador because he's been in the space long enough and he's one of the early builders, especially, you have to credit the Dapper Labs team and the Dapper team for really bringing the NFT ecosystem to where it is. The two of them are probably the most important
Agreed.
OG builders in the space. So being able to have Roham on, but also like we can't sleep on the fact that again, Mattel, Disney, Live Nation, NFL, NBA, they're all still working in the space with Dapper and bringing it. And I did have lunch with Redeema recently, and I just said, I think you guys are poised perfectly for what's going to happen when people start coming back. And I think that we're starting to see some of that in different ways, but I think the brands are also going to see that the underlying technology around digital identity and digital asset ownership and provable digital asset ownership is still a big opportunity for them if they want to spend that time. So great conversation.
Great conversation. Dapper's still bullish. We love it. It was amazing to have her on. Thank you for coordinating this and hosting and getting us started early. Apologies for being late, Sam.
All good.
Or
All right,
was he
Jinsey,
early?
well,
Honestly, I think he was early.
he may have been early. You may have been here just in spirit. We'll figure that out in the
Figure
post.
it out in post.
All right,
Have a good one,
thanks so
Jency.
much.